All right. Okay. Let's start with today's session. Today's session is about continuation from last session. That is, yesterday we discussed about um, a problem statement for mini project where we are trying to take some input from somewhere from web API, and then we are going to write some code to make some kind of subscription um, uh, kind of project. That means user can log into a system maybe, and then he will enter his email ID, and then he will choose some states, some states which he is interested in to get the day-to-day COVID 19 statistics, such as active cases in his state, deceased cases, and maybe as someone suggested, we can also have maybe a graphical image to show it in a better way. Okay. So yesterday we tried to break down things into different parts on a notepad, and then today we'll continue from there. Okay. So I do not have any slides for this, so we will try to discuss, and let's see how it goes. Okay. So yesterday it was um, okay, I think I deleted it. Okay. Okay. So let us use a whiteboard, just to have a graphical kind of imagination. Okay. So let us go back to the problem. The problem statement is, so we divided it into like email, and then a reporting module, and then maybe web scraping. So we defined, I think, three modules, three or four modules, and then I have put that on GitHub. Let me just show you, so that we have a reference. Okay. So it's in Python, bootcamp code, and then there is a project folder. So here is what we did, project brainstorming.txt. So this is what we did, and we will continue to use this folder for project code and discussion and uploading other things that are related to project. Okay. So yeah, these are the four modules that we tried to come up with, and also we saw the next step is to find out interfaces between these, like after collecting data, where does the data go, what should be the flow. So we will try to do a flow, and then we'll also try to define interfaces. Okay. So let us get back here. So let us do, first is to collect data, or maybe we'll just draw a box, collect data, and then how these boxes are connected, and then reports, and then we have a mail service, and then we have a web scraping module. So these are the like four modules. Now in order to define the connections between them, so once we collect data, so where should it be sent to? It is not definitely we collect the data and then send directly mail that data, because it's just a raw data and it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so then does the data go to web scraping? So data doesn't go to web scraping because it doesn't make any sense, because web scraping is a independent module which does collect the news from popular websites and then makes report and then gives it to maybe mailbox. Okay, so so data should be sent to reports, and then from reports it goes to mail, and then from web scraping data it doesn't go to back to data processing here. Maybe it has its own submodule, something like this. It processes its own data because we don't want to mix up API data and then this is API data. Let me just API data. So API data and web scraping data should not be mixed, although the processing might happen. So we will just maybe soon after web scraping. So output of the web scraping maybe can be handled inside inside the web scraping, and here we create web scraping reports maybe. Then maybe as and when we go when we start writing code, what happens is maybe there are the code might look similar for these two reporting. So maybe we will merge this reporting with this reporting. Okay, but then since we do not have beforehand that how does the data look like, so this is just a rough idea about about the about the models and how it is connected. Okay, so now we need to define interfaces on top of this. Interface definition is nothing but we need to have a function or a module, and inside that function, and then we need to expose that into different modules. For example, so once the data is processed here, this guy should call some sort of function in reports. So there are multiple ways of intermodal or inter-process communication, but here they are not different processes, they are just in a single process. So one of the ways to send data from one module to another module is by function call. Okay, so it maybe there are other ways, could be like you write it into a file, and then from file it goes to reports. Okay, so that is one of the ways, but currently we do not have any need to create a temporary file and then that file gets read into report. So we do not have any, that kind of requirement, because it is happening in the same system. And also when we create file and if report is trying to read that file, at the same time there could be multiple writes from data data module, API data processing module, and then there could be problems in handling the file. So we just avoid that kind of design for this particular communication. Okay, so we will just call functions. Okay, so let us define one function here. So I'll just mark so that I know that I need to call some sort of function. Okay, so I'll mark here as just f1, just for our later we will define exact name. Okay, that is one function call which is residing here. Okay, and then soon after the flow is okay, I get one second. Okay, I get data from somewhere outside, which is an API call, and then from there I'm going to process it, and maybe I put it in a map or a list or whatever data structure I want, and then I send that data using a function call, and I will send that data as an argument to that function. Okay, so similarly from reports, where does it go? So from reports, maybe I send a mail. Okay, so instead of sending a mail directly, what I do is I wait at mail module. Maybe I'll just wait here a little bit, because soon after I send mail from reports to mail, so I don't want to send two mails, one for the reports from API, and one for if I as soon as the report is finished, if I send mail, user will get one mail for this report, and another mail for web scraping report, this report. Okay, so I do not want to do that, so there should be maybe a temporary placeholder uh, to send mail. Okay, so and then maybe I collect reports data here, and wait for some time. Wait in the sense, maybe I call no, two functions here. That means I call f2 here, which is maybe f2. Let me define it inside reports. The definition is here. Okay, and it gets called at mail. Okay, so soon after reports, I will um, call that I'll call this function, maybe get function. Okay, now let us and then let us look at the problems later, and then maybe I have a function here f3, and then maybe I call, soon after f2 maybe I call f3, and maybe I aggregate both of the data, uh, f2 and f3, and then maybe I send a mail. Okay, so but now the problem is, how does mail come to know that the reporting is finished? Okay, so in fact, report, so that is one of the ways. Either mail and reports have a communication in function calls. So if I define function here and try to call it here, then I do not know when this when is the finishing time of this reporting. That means if I have an Excel sheet, I'm making an Excel sheet, and then if I put it in an Excel sheet and then I send it as a function call, I do not know whether that is finished or not. Okay, so what I do is I'll just um, now that is the problem. So I do not know um, when to finish it. So maybe what I'll do is now there is a problem. So in I will make this mail as more of a service. Okay, uh, like only maybe there is a function called as uh, m1, which does only servicing. This doesn't, this particular module do not call anything from outside. Okay, because if I try to call, the problem is I do not know, the mail module doesn't know when is the report when is the report finishes its job, or web scraping job. So these are like little challenges that we face when we were trying to communicate between the modules. So mail should not be worried about when does the report finish its report. So in order to do that, soon after reporting is done, maybe I call m1 here. Okay, and then I know that once I finish the report, that means I get the return value, and then I can simply call this mail module. But instead of if I call mail module, what it does is we have the problem that we discussed at the beginning. So it will soon send the mail. So the better idea is, so I need to send two things at a time. That is, one is web scraping report and one is the data collected from this one. So what I do is, I instead of uh, uh, what I'll do is, in the reports I will try to communicate here and get the report from web scraping, and then bundle it here along with the mail, and then I'll send here. Okay, so report finishes its job and keeps data in say one data structure called as d1, and it calls a function from web scraping called as maybe w1 is defined here, and it calls function here w1, and then soon after d1 the w1 gets called here, and then I will bundle both of them, and then I'll send the mail. So now we have looked at various problems while designing the interfaces. That means who should call what and what are the problems. Okay, so now we have a little clarity about how these things work. Okay, now let us try to put it in a maybe in a pseudocode fashion. So now let me clean up this. Okay. Okay, let me clean up this, and let us try to before that I think it's better to save this so that we have brainstorm. Okay. And I'll just clear it. So I have a sequence. Now what we did was we split a project into 4 different modules. Okay, splitting is fine, and then we also try to find out the flow of the modules. That is, first thing is from API, or let me make it a little bit bigger. From API, get the data. Okay, then process the data in a reports module. Okay, and there is a parallel process which is happening. Parallel process in the sense that module works independently, web scraping module. So web scraping, okay, module, maybe it's gets called here, and then we have web scraping, and then what else we had, and then it get aggregated, and then that's mail service. Okay, so now we have a clarity about how the data should flow. Okay, so this input is coming from some COVID API. Okay, so now at this point of time we are not talking about what kind of typically now we know that we are going to implement in Python, but typically we are not talking about what sort of programming language that we are going to use, what sort of libraries or what sort of frameworks that I'm going to use, nothing. So here we are just defining the flow of the program, and we have defined the interfaces. Okay. um, Now what we'll do is we will write function names. So that is our motive here. So let us go back to our studies discussion here. So I'll just take up this, like a new file here. Okay. So let me just remove it, remove all the stuff here. So not required. Collect data. Second service, and then okay. Now let us try to. Now what are we trying to do here? Okay. This API which collects data. This is nothing but the first module here. Collect data from API. API. Okay. And passes some data structure to reports. Okay. So I will define a function, maybe something called as get process data. Okay. Maybe here I have some okay. Here I'm we are not defining what kind of data structure that is going to be present here. So this definition gets called here. He uses this. This is defined here. He uses this here, and then makes a report out of it. Okay. So maybe he has another function called as process API data. Okay. Inside that, maybe he's calling this and processing that data. Okay. Now coming back to the diagram. So this diagram is actually we have very few modules, so it looks very simple. So if you look at some videos on system design on YouTube, so for example, there are a lot of examples like design elevator, and design or Twitter, design some kind of WhatsApp chat service. If you look at them, so that will be like it contains a lot of modules and how it is connected, and it looks quite complicated. And then now that complexity is what we are trying to address. Okay. But since we are just learning to break down the things, so we are having very few modules. Okay. So just to tell you how the process works, and then we can try to understand bigger modules. Okay. Now, okay, after making this report, what happens to the mail service? Mail service is just one guy who maybe he has one API, something like, okay, send mail. Okay. So some mail format. Okay, let's not define it here. Mail format. Okay. So this is just a service in the sense it doesn't call any of them. So here in web scraping we have, so here I don't I want to send a mail here. Okay. Let us try to send a mail here, and then what happens is I'll be missing the web scraping data. Okay. So let us wait to send mail. So let us not call it at this point. Let us wait for that. So at web scraping, maybe it has get web get news is better. Get news. Okay, so I have defined it here, and then um, I will, in the reporting part, what I will do is define process. Maybe I am doing additional beautification, such as maybe I am going to put some table around it, or maybe some colors around it. So process news. Okay, process news is much simpler. Okay, so and then I'm not going to send mail here, because it will just simply send only mail. It will simply send only the data containing the process news. Okay, so let me wait here. Now let me see process news. So inside this I need to call get news. Okay, so now we have a diagram here, and then we have realized that diagram in terms of uh, function calls. Okay, now we have just defined the interfaces here. Now send mail. Now my aim is to send mail after these two. Okay, so maybe this returns some kind of data, some data structure, or maybe I have a global variable or the global data structure which I can use. So I'll either call send mail here, or maybe I write a new function, something like aggregate aggregate data. So this is left to people who write the code, developers. Maybe they can aggregate these two functions here. Okay, what I need to do is I simply need to say collect data from API data is equal to some. Okay, and then maybe I'll send news data is equal to. Now we will discuss about the parameters that we need to send a little bit later. We'll while coding we can define that, but usually that also will be a part of interface definition. But now just let us simplify it, and we just make the function names, and then we can work on parameters. Okay, so news data is collected process news. Okay, maybe now we have already beautified it here, and then we are calling the process news here, and here I aggregated some kind of aggregation, maybe API data plus news data. Okay, and then I send it to send mail function. Okay, now I have successfully defined how the process should be. Okay, so I had this we brainstormed a while ago, and then we simplified it, and then we have this particular flow for now. Okay, now coming back here, okay, don't worry about these numbers. So this is how the interface is defined. Then so far, any questions here at this point of time? So is it clear? So we looked at various problems, like what happens if you call a function from say from here to here, or here to here. So we're trying to keep the modules to itself. So we're trying to aggregate things at report, and then we are doing it. Because if you try to call um, maybe some function which is in the report here, maybe there are problems that okay, you're like this whole thing is not independent. Okay, so we're trying to define interfaces in the modules that we need to work independently. So this need to work independently, this need to work independently, and even web scraping need to work independently, and then we are trying to aggregate it here. Okay, and then we send the mail here, and but we call the function here. So function gets called here. So all the things gets aggregated here. So report as well as mail, and um, API, and all these three gets aggregated here. Okay. So this is our, so we have just defined interfaces in these modules, and we have defined the flow here. Okay. Aggregate data is the flow. So a process API data gets the process data here, process news. Okay. So this is very simple, simple way. In fact, you can directly start writing code for such small design, but if you have clarity, then it's much easier to come up with the interfaces. So that is all I had in my mind, about defining interfaces. Okay. So now what you can, as an exercise, what you can do is uh, redo whatever we have discussed here, and then try to connect the uh, connect the dots as we did here, and then try to write your own functions here, and then you will have clarity that okay, how our thought has, now we had a simple requirement. From that thought, we are trying to break down that thought into different pieces, and then we are trying to connect here. Now in the next session, what we'll do is we'll start making different modules, and then we will define the interfaces first, and then we will start writing the code. Okay. So we'll take one module and write the code, maybe a couple of sessions. For each module we'll spend some time, and then since we have already defined interfaces, we don't have to worry about how it is going to work with the other module. Okay. So we'll start writing code inside these interfaces, and then maybe it grows into a slightly bigger code than we have expected. And then we'll also try to simulate something like, we try to add a new feature. Maybe we will add a new feature, something like, instead of sending a text mail, additionally we will send a graph. For that, maybe we'll slightly need to modify a report here, and then we need to do some processing in the report module, and then we need to make it a graph, and then send mail. Then as and when we go through the process of writing code, then there will be changes, but the rough idea, and at higher level, like whatever people call it, like 300 feet or 1000 feet picture is what is this, and then this is, we are getting closer, and then we'll write code here. Okay. So that's all I had for today's session. So it is about defining interfaces. Okay. So any questions, please ask. So I'll post these diagrams um, and these interfaces in GitHub here. I will add one more file, and it will serve as a reference for us. Okay.